Welcome to the Sacred Healing Podcast, where the old is new, the ancient is innovative, and the forgotten is remembered. We believe that sacred healing is your birthright. Join us on each episode as we uniquely, authentically, and mystically dive into the bold and vulnerable life of many magical humans. From breath, spirituality, shadow work, and all things in the esoteric realm of healing, we don't leave any stone unturned on this bold journey of growth as we start to explore the remembrance of what it means to be human. So take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, and let's get sacred.
Hello, sacred humans. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I am chatting with a gorgeous being named Kimberly Mufferi. She has had a camera in her hand since she was a little kid, and she has filled the world with so much life and joy through her photos. And I'm so pumped for you guys to hear a little bit more about the woman behind the lens. She found her love for photographs from a really young age. And after graduating from New York University, where she studied culture and media, and after working in New York City as a photo editor for several years, she soon realized that it was time to turn her passion into her dharma. And finally, she became a professional photographer. Her photography business includes and offers boutique photography services focused on portraits, brands, and goddess shoots. And she specializes in retreats, events, lifestyle, brand, and content creation. And her goal is to reflect creativity, originality, and authenticity in her photography. But really, to me, she's more than that. She's a friend, and she captures some of the most authentic and vulnerable moments and makes you feel so safe and authentic to be in your fullest expression. And I really trust her behind the lens, and I feel really safe with her behind the lens. And she's one of those people that can weave through spaces and make sure that everyone feels comfortable to be who they truly are in their fullest uniqueness of self, while she's able to capture the transparent and authentic and really true integrity of who that being is as a person on the inside, rather than just what's captured on the outside. And she helps people glow in their own skin. I don't even know how she does it. She is magic behind the lens. Today, I'm really excited for you guys to get to know a little bit more about Kimberly on the inside, and not just how she, gets to walk and weave through all of these magical retreats and summits and spaces like Fit for Service, but more about her as a human, more about the connection to her and where she grew up in New Jersey, and kind of more about her roots. And so I'm really excited for you to get to know the Kimberly that I know as a good friend. So without further ado, please enjoy this beautiful conversation that Kimberly and I had in Sedona. And we had a few tech errors, but we got through them. And if I could share the bloopers with you guys, you would die of laughter. But for now, enjoy this non-bloopered episode of my conversation with Kimberly Mufferi.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Oh my God,
So big lizard. Oh, there's a lizard back there.
A little baby
It went
lizard.
inside the tree. It lives in the tree. And it's like, why are you guys doing this?
It was a big lizard.
It's like, can you guys get the F away from my spot right now? Okay.
Do I have leaves in my hair?
No.
It's just all up in the tree.
Okay. Maybe we should serve with some breaths, because I feel like it's the thing to do in Sedona. Yes. Okay. So we'll just close our eyes. Get grounded. Just sitting in gratitude that we get to be in Sedona with this beautiful weather, the sun shining, the beautiful energy, all these wonderful vortexes of goodness and nourishing, soul nourishing, cell nourishing energy. And we get to be here for the next 5 or 6 days, and we get to work on ourselves. We get to connect in community, and we get to dive into this really deep, juicy conversation. And so with that, taking a deep breath in through our nose. And then exhale. Breath in. Exhale. Or deep breath in. Exhale. And as we wait for this plane to pass, because I know that the computer will be picking up on this plane, maybe it will, maybe. Just sitting into gratitude for being able to record this beautiful podcast outside, and knowing that there may be noises and things that come into our space that we didn't necessarily want or invite, but it's just the way that it is, and it is sacred as it is. And if a bug flies in our nose, we'll be able to handle it, no problem. And with that, we'll open our eyes and come back into this beautiful space. Okay, so when in Rome, we are not only wearing lots of spiritual garb, but we are also outside in Sedona, having fun, laughing, playing in all the moments and all the mundane moments. I got a beautiful juice from a local juicery in Sedona, and so I will, I don't know, ceremonially give us some of this juice.
Ooh, pink juice.
It's the pink juice. It is the good.
The blue milk is also really good.
Oh, I know. All of them are good. It's got lime, lemon, raspberries, pitaya, coconut water, and honey. So, and we also both have coffee because that's just what it is today. Because it is the morning. Okay. So just wanted to cheers to being with you. I love you.
I love you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So everyone, welcome to the Sacred Healing Podcast. I'm so excited because this is actually the first live, well, not live, but in person next to the human podcast that I'm recording, which is really special. They've all my other podcasts previous to this have been virtual. So I'm super stoked. Being in this energy is amazing. And this is Kim. She is a artist. She is a creator. She is somebody that I've looked up to and somebody who's brought inspiration to me. And she is on this earth to create art. She's on this earth to share her gifts. And she's a beautiful human inside and out. We met through a community, and we've kept in touch over the past couple years and have grown closer and closer and closer. And Kim, you're like one of the people that I can send a voice note to, and I don't have to worry about judgment, shame, guilt, any of the things that come with sharing something with somebody that's so intimate. And you always hold space. And I feel like our friendship has just evolved over time, even if we're not in the same location. Because you're typically in Texas, but you also travel for work. I'm typically in New England. I travel for work. So there's a lot of travel. So without further ado, for everyone here, this is Kim. And Kim, I'll let you kind of introduce a little bit about yourself as well.
All right. Well, I'm a photographer, and I also work with a community that you've been a part of for a while. I work closely with them. Was in New York for a long time, and then I moved to Texas, which is still wild to me because I never thought I would be in Texas, but here we are.
It's kind of country. It's like semi-country.
Yeah, it's pretty country. It's Texas, which has been like a beautiful transition, and that move was the same time that a lot of things were changing in my life and kind of diving into doing deeper work. And I'd been a photographer for a really long time, but it was at that point that my work shifted into having more meaning and more power. And I think healing and that sort of, there was just a lot of transitions at once. And I was like, well, now I live in Texas and everything is different and it's great.
Well, first, thank you for that. Because you share your art in the form of photography and it's so beautiful. And it's kind of weaved this really interesting path for you to land where you are today. But kind of doing a little rewind. Tell me about how you grew up. Tell me about life in New York and what challenges or hardships you went through that maybe shaped you into who you are today.
Wow. Okay. So I grew up actually in South Jersey.
The dirty.
Yeah, the shore. And I was also grew up a Jehovah's Witness. So there was this religious kind of overarching theme of like, I didn't do a lot of normal things that people did as kids. Didn't celebrate holidays, birthdays. So there was a lot of it just wasn't normal per se for, what other people would expect is normal.
Do we need to move your chair forward? Because I feel like there's the sun in your eyeball. It's a little bit at my eyeballs. Yeah, that's way better.
Yes,
yeah,
actually.
Okay, yeah. Okay. I saw it in your eye and I was like, I knew we were going to have to adjust. We're adjusting with the light. The sun is chasing us.
I tried to block it. It didn't work.
Okay, so you're in the Jers. You have this religious kind of overtone in your upbringing. Was that like in your family, your parents?
Yeah, it was my dad essentially was the Jehovah's Witness. And like, they're lovely people. Like Jehovah's Witness was actually great. I learned a lot of structure and almost like it made me more academic in a way because I was always reading and like doing these very structured things. And that was great. And then when my parents got divorced, I kind of stopped doing that. And I kind of began to like find my own voice, life, self. Even at that like really young age of being like, there's something more to what is here. And like, I mean, I did mushrooms at a pretty young age, not like in a sense of, oh, I'm going to drop in for a mushroom ceremony. Like, no, I did mushrooms and hung out with my friends. But even in that, like at that time period, I remember just thinking like, I don't want to have a normal job where I'm like sitting in an office and like just seeing what other people are doing and watching them like kind of work their lives away and being like, that can't be it. Like there has to be something else. And I didn't know what that was or what that even, it was just the feeling of like something is not right.
Something's not in alignment.
This normal kind of just structure of like society or whatever you want to call it.
Like go to school, get a job, make the money.
Yeah, like checking all the boxes, get married. And I remember being like, oh, I'll get married by this age. And like all of these ideas that I thought were mine were just ideas that had been like kind of implanted via society, culture, all of those things, and realizing like, oh, I'm not going to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll be on your own timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you were in Jersey and this was kind of this setup of your life. And then what shifted? Like when was there a moment when like, did something happen to like shift your mindset, or did you slowly transition kind of bit by bit or a series of moments? How did that shift take place for you?
I feel like it was like a slow shift that I didn't know was happening throughout my entire life. Of like, I moved out of South Jersey around like 19, moved to North Carolina for a little while, and then was like, oh, this doesn't seem right. And then
that's so weird.
What part?
I was in Raleigh.
Okay, I was in Charlotte.
Yeah,
I was there for like 2 years, and then I started going to college there, and then I was like, this doesn't fit here. Something doesn't fit. Mm-hmm. Lovely place, just wasn't for me. So then that's when I moved to New York City, and like doing the hustle of like, I mean, everything in New York is a hustle. I feel like just working a lot, bartending, going to school, like just constant. And then I started doing photography, and it started with like events and weddings. And then I eventually got into travel, which that all blew up at COVID, which really is kind of the part of how it's like, why am I still in New York City? And that's how I ended up moving to Texas. But during those years in New York, in the beginning, it was amazing. oh my God, there's art and like all of these things. And I was young and I was enjoying that, like that New York City kind of life of like going to a party here and this art show and this event and underground things and getting really inspired and finding it so beautiful. And, you know, after about 20, almost 20 years, I started to realize that that energy was actually really heavy and it's a lot. And when our world goes through something, a city with that many people, it goes through it in such an intense way because there's so many people and you're on top of each other. So it's really hard to like separate what's mine, what's someone next to me, what all these people on a packed subway. Like there's just so much that you're picking up and sounds and all that. And as I started to, probably like the last 7 years that I was in New York, I was traveling all the time for work. So I wasn't in the city that much. So I would come back and it would be great, but I knew I was leaving again in a few weeks. So it wasn't that bad. But when I, got grounded into New York City during COVID, I was like, oh, this is a lot.
Yeah.
And it just became, can I say COVID on a podcast? I just realized I maybe can't say that word.
You can.
Okay. Sure.
Don't take us down.
We're just talking about my experience in New York City. So then during that time frame was when I really was like, I don't know why I'm still here. And feeling like the subway would roll by and the ambulance sounds and it was just so intense.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I had become more in alignment with myself and my feelings and body that I started to realize that how much the city was actually affecting me, because I didn't have the awareness of that before. You just don't know it until you know it.
Nature was calling you. And so during the COVID era, so is that when you decided that you were going to move? Or
pretty much. I kind of had an idea of like, I don't necessarily want to keep living in New York City, but where else would I go? Like, just where else would possibly be like have all these things, and this is where my business is, and this is where my work is, and a lot of fear. And I kept thinking of like other places, and for years, Austin had been a place that like when someone would say the name Austin, I was always just like, didn't know anything about it. It just was this feeling of like, that sounds like a place I might go. Even though I know nothing about it. Sort of wind up moving there. It was actually really funny. I was like, oh, it's like I knew years ago. And even then, like, I don't know if Austin is forever. The summers are real hot.
Summers are real hot.
Real hot. It's a little tough.
I've got the opposite problem. It's like New England, the winters are real cold. Real cold. And I'm like, can I get to Austin somehow? Okay, so let's dive into when you knew that you wanted to be a photographer and when you realized that that was going to be your life's passion and mission and dharma. When was that moment? How did you get into photography? How did that weave throughout your life?
So I kind of almost always knew I wanted to be a photographer. My mom was a photographer before she got into a little bit of addiction and all those sorts of things. But when I was like really young growing up, probably like 7, I remember there was this hallway in the closet where she kept all of her cameras, and I would always go in there and play around. So I kind of always knew that. I was like, that seems fun and inspiring, and I was just drawn to it. But when I was like in high school, I remember thinking, well, I'll do photography on the side. I can't do that as my actual job because then I won't love it anymore. It'll become work. And no one ever told me, do what you love for work. Like, do it.
Hello, sacred humans. Quickly, I want to share with you something I've added into my daily rituals that has me buzzing, and that is Rise Mushroom Coffee. Rise entered my life through my Instagram algorithm that obviously knows what products I like, and I gave it a try, and just wow, it has amazingly delicious flavor. Not only this, they also have a mushroom matcha powder, Mind blown. And they're filled with superfoods and super mushrooms. What I like about Rise is that they use 100% organic ingredients, and their mushroom farms are located in California. If you've always wanted to try mushroom coffee but haven't yet pulled the trigger, this is your moment. And there is zero risk because they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you're interested in the deliciousness of Rise mushroom elixirs, head to the show notes and you will find a link for 20% off your first order, or simply use the discount code Jessica, all caps, at checkout. That's JESSICA, all caps, at checkout. And now let's get back to our amazing episode of the Sacred Healing Podcast.
So with photography, basically, I didn't want to do it as work because I thought I would lose my love for it. And it wasn't until like I went to college for culture and communications, not for photography, still thinking like I have to go do this other thing, and I'll do this other thing that I love inside. And then at some point, I remember I bought like a camera when I got out of school, and I was like still kind of bartending. I started doing photo editing, and I was just like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not doing what I love for what? Like to spare like the love that I have for it, and it didn't make any sense. And it was just this mind-boggling thing to me that no one ever like told me. And it seems so simple, like do what you love. But I think so many people don't think of that when they're younger. They're like, well, I'm going to do what my parents would make me happy, or I'll do the thing that will make me money, or it's structured, or it's all of these checking boxes that we think we have to do all the time. And at some point I just was like, well, I'm gonna do photography. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm a photographer now. It was like very much of a journey of like, well, I'll shoot this and I'll bartend it tonight, and I'll get all of these working pieces together. Also, it's New York City, so it's expensive. I always had more than one job.
You got to take care of yourself too. But also now, after setting yourself up and putting in the hours, you've made photography your full-time gig, which is so fucking cool. I mean, I love that you decided to live this passion, and like, what a limiting story to say, oh, I have to do something else and not do my passion because I have to do that on the side, because if I do that for work, then I won't like it. It'll be work. And like, it will take away the love, right? Like, what a story that's been indoctrinated from genetically on almost, right? Like, and then to like break free of that.
And switching like to doing the thing that I love, and then realizing that there's going to be things that I don't want to do, but I still love the overall thing. Like I said, where it was a process of getting there. Like I was shooting things that like they weren't like moving my soul. But it was like, well, this is going to pay half the month's rent or something, like, and you go through that. And I think with anything, you're getting more and more in alignment as you're going through it. And the longer that I did it, and the longer that I paid attention to what actually made me feel good, when I started to say yes to the things that really felt aligned and good, and no to things that I would only do out of fear and scarcity. Like if I would say no to something that wasn't right, literally almost in the same day, I would get something that was like, what about this opportunity?
The synchronicities started coming in.
And like being able to function from a space of, and feeling like safe in a space of like, you're a photographer, you don't know, you're not getting a paycheck every week. You have to go and book these jobs and find your clients. So that was like a constant worry. So I always would bartend on the side. Because like, well, if I have a slow month, it doesn't matter. I still am good. And there's a lot that comes from childhood with that, of like growing up with not a lot of money. And there's a whole story there deeper in childhood of not having things, and being afraid that I've had to. It's like interesting that I would choose a job that was unstable. Like if you become a nurse, you're like, all right, I work these hours, I make this amount of money, or teacher, and it's like very structured. And you have benefits and all of these things, and like a retirement plan, or I don't even know, normal jobs. I think they have all those things. I don't know. I've never had one. But like choosing to have this thing where I would constantly having to remind myself that I'm safe, I'm okay, and trust that like I'm gonna bring in what's for me. I can trust the universe. Everything is safe. And that was a constant journey. And the better that I got at trusting, the more it opened up. And it's like this thing where I'm like, well, he's like, just it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna figure it out. And then it just keeps building on that and becoming more and more aligned. And it's amazing, but it was hard. And even sometimes I can still catch myself being like, ooh, I don't know if it's like the winter might be slow. And it's like I have all these other projects I'm working on that I'm fine, but it's like still this, and like, maybe that's what an artist needs, is that constant. I mean, we do essentially, not just the money part of it, but like you're always searching for that, like that creativity, that new exciting thing that's going to light you up, that new way of expression. And in that search and flow of constantly moving, there's obviously the flow of constantly moving of what it's going to look like and where it's going to come from. And I mean, it gives me life essentially in a way, because it's like I'm not stagnant. There has to be change. There has to be shift. And that's where all the creativity, I guess, comes in those spaces.
Yeah, and you talk about expression, and I think that's the perfect word for sharing art in general in the world. And most of the time, you know, when you kind of went through your life experience and you had some scarcity mindset, you had some limiting beliefs in what your passion could bring you. And when you shifted into, no, I'm going to go all in on my passion, the universe spoke back to you and said, okay, here we go then. And the more that you started to come into your expression and not suppress that expression, the more gifts you got back. And with, like, to make a parallel into breath work, because I do a lot of breath work and facilitate breath work, when we talk about expression and the act of expressing things out of your body and into another world or space or canvas or portrait or photo, that is an act of like releasing something from your being. And if you suppress that, you can become depressed. And it sounded like you were in your early days, like somewhat suppressing some of that. And then feeling like, man, this energy in New York is really heavy. But it might have just been like you weren't in your fullest expression of what you were truly meant to be on this planet. And so I love the word expression, and I love that you just used that. I want to morph into kind of like how you express your art now, because, and I'll let you explain it in your own words, but what inspires me about your work is that not only do you say, hey, I'm a photographer, but you're really an artist, and you share your art with everyone so beautifully. And you take pictures of people in their most vulnerable moments.
Today, I want to share with you all the delicious cacao with a K drinking chocolate. Cacao is one of my favorite brands of ceremonial grade cacao and is a delicious addition to my morning routine. Cacao is jam-packed with delicious nutrients that work with my body to stay energized, connected, and focused. What I also love about cacao is that they are a nonprofit on a mission to protect the native heirloom strands of cacao in both Peru and Guatemala by giving back to the farmers and communities that make it available to us. If you are interested in cacao with a K, go to the show notes and you will find a link for 10% off your first order, or simply by using the discount code Jessica, all caps, at checkout. That's JESSICA, all capital letters, at checkout.
Okay. So one of my ideas, goals, life purpose things when it came to photography was that I wanted to show people beauty in whatever form that means. And that it's not like, oh, it's a beautiful woman, or if it's a beautiful, like, no, the beauty of everything, the beautifulness of the rawness and nature, and like this like untethered kind of unbound idea of what beautiful is. Because it's not what we've made it up to be in the head of, like, this is what beautiful is, and this is, like, you know, society standards of what beauty is. And that goes from not just, you know, physical appearance, but from full expression of emotions and all of the different range of, like, things that we can be and how we can express. And so I went through life for so long just kind of hustling through that, and not like when I started to slow down and notice like, oh, I want to photograph those moments. And whether that was, nature, travel, which is a big part of my life, for a while was the years of travel photography, and realizing like there's so much more that's passing us by. So if there's just these moments that I can capture that people can look back and see, and then transferring that into the human aspect of how many emotions people express and feeling safe to fully express.
For those of you who don't already know, my husband and I own a coffee company called Gay Head Coffee. And of course, we drink our own coffee every day, and it's some of the most flavorful and inviting coffee, especially with the nostalgia of coming from a can rather than paper or plastic packaging. But I'm biased, so check it out for yourself. If you're interested, head over to the show notes where you will find a link to order your coffee today from gayheadcoffee.com. That's GAYHEADCOFFEE.com. Thank you all for your support. It means the world to us as a small business.
So I think what you're describing, and like what's coming up for me and aligning for me and what you're describing, is being able to hold space for people and almost being like response able and like responsible in the like clearest form of the word is to be like response able to people that are going through something that is like magical and moving, potentially like releasing trauma. A lot of the time you are photographing breath work, like deep somatic breath work ceremonies. You're photographing like a lot of trauma releasing ceremonies. And in that, you have to be so in tune with not only the people in the space, but like you have to be like grounded in yourself. And so I think when you talk about making sure people feel safe and held in those types of containers, like to me, you're one of those people where I trust to be able to hold the space. And I trust that you're weaving in a way where if you take a picture of me in a vulnerable moment, and you've probably deleted like thousands of pictures of people that are like too much. But you like, I trust that you're going to share and like look to the beauty in the release in its like most organic form. And that's like how I've looked at your art, because it feels so authentic and it does feel safe. Like what you're describing feels like the safety in being able to weave into a space and know when to capture somebody at the perfect moment and not make them feel like they're ugly in that moment or that they have to worry that there's a camera there. And a lot of times, like in my somatic breathwork ceremonies, everyone signs a release form and it says, oh, like there might be photography or videography. And some people get like really closed off because of that. They're like, is there going to be a photography here today? Like it like contracts people. And so I think that you have a really beautiful gift of being able to like really open people up into their fullest expression and not worry, and their fullest authentic expression too. Like, because I think there's also like the other flip side of that where people don't contract and they're like, oh, there's a camera, cool.
Yeah,
I'm
perform.
gonna perform, right? And so
Yeah.
then it's performative. But I think you do a really good job of like capturing the authenticity of people's actual expression in the most vulnerable moments of their lives, in the deepest ceremonies. And so I love that. And I do want to touch on like weaving into the space where you've started to capture women. And in that too, you were also recently a coach and speaker for an event called League of Queens. And I do want to touch on that because I feel like that is such a badass thing that you were able to lead a group of all women. And I don't know how many folks were there, like 100 or so.
I think it was about 70.
70?
No, it was about 70, yeah.
Yeah, about 70 women. That's a big group, right? And you were able to like not only be like a keynote coach, but be able to tell your story and talk about, sharing the beauty of women just being in their own feminine essence. So I'd love to hear about that and like how that kind of came into your life and why you feel called to share art in that way.
There's a lot there. I wanted to go back to the safety part of
let's go back.
people feeling safe. like I said before, when you show up with your heart, people can feel that. And I think a lot of people have a fear of being seen. I mean, even today, I'm like, oh, we're doing a podcast, I'm going to be on video. Like I'm nervous about it. And people have that.
Yeah.
So when there's a camera, it's like adds this other element of how many people are going to see me. This isn't just the person I'm with. It's now this other element. And it's part of the journey of, I don't know, healing, is being able to be seen, being able to be authentic and completely yourself in no matter what space and no matter what comes out. And when we go through these healing, whether it's breath work and you're expressing something, like, who said that wasn't beautiful? Who said that ugly tears, ugly cry, whatever, like, who said it? Why is that ugly? Like, it's these ideas that we hold on to, that, like, crying isn't pretty, or sweating isn't pretty, or shaking, like all of these things. And it's like, who decided? Like, we've made that up, and we believe it, and it's like, no, like, let that go. There's beauty in everything,
Right.
And
there's
like,
beauty in creating your own reality, and you get to decide what's beautiful and not beautiful.
And like, of course, there's like, things that are just plain beautiful, like a sunset. It's beautiful, but if it's not looking over a mountaintop in Sedona, can a sunset still be beautiful in a city if you're in a parking lot? And it's like, well, yeah. And it's like, we learning to appreciate beauty in all its forms is like one of the biggest things. And then the range of things that I photographed, it's like not just women or these like really emotional events, but like childbirth. That's not pretty.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like, but it's magical. It's one of the most profound things I've ever photographed. And it's like, are we going to say that's not beautiful? Like,
well, I think it's one of those things where, again, you have such a gift for holding space for people and being responsible for people, that somebody would trust you to take childbirth photos of them, which is one of the most intimate and transformative things a woman could potentially go through in their entire lives. And it's like, the fact that you're being called and asked to do that is like such a, I feel like, a compliment, because that's one of the most like vulnerable times of your life, and one of the most beautiful and magical and heart-wrenching, and like
one of the hardest things.
One of the hardest.
At least that's what I hear.
Yeah,
that's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like. It looks, sounds, yeah.
But that trust too, like that oh, like, do they trust me to be their photographer? And it's like, well, think about how you feel when you're around a friend that you trust, and the freedom that you have, and you're not holding anything back, and you are completely authentically yourself because you are with one of your best friends or someone that you feel really safe with, and all of a sudden you get to be 100% authentically you, and the expression that comes out of that pure authenticity, that is the magic. That's what makes a photo good, is that it's authentic and real, and you're not holding back, and it's just fully, completely, authentically, naturally what it should be. So like, that's how I try to approach, I mean, not just photography, but life. Like, can I make someone feel comfortable, good, safe around me? Like, that's so important to me, especially with like some of my own past of not feeling safe around people. And if I can show up in any space, with or without a camera, in the safest way, in the way that will make them feel like they can be authentically them, then I'm good. That's what that to me is like,
that's
life
the dharma.
journey stuff right there. It's like, that's what I want to bring forward. And then that's what part of League of Queens was speaking to a bunch of women of self-love and self-confidence and all of the things that we've taken on that aren't ours. We've just been trained to think them that, or think that that's what's normal. I grew up, I was like a teen in the 90s where like being really skinny was a thing, and like, it changes throughout the decades of what is the trendy new thing that you're supposed to be.
Skinny body, skinny eyebrows, skinny, all the things.
Dark brown lipstick, like, and now, and it just constantly is changing. So when you think about that, of like these, I need to be this thing, and it's like, well, for right now, Maybe. You're gonna look back. I look back at the photos of me in the 90s, and I'm like, what?
It's
was
rough.
going
It's
on?
rough. And I always think, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God there was no social media, because this picture does not have to live on.
Yeah, but I mean, even the change and transformation in that of like what society holds as beautiful and trending and all of that changes so much. Like, so if we can anchor to what is authentically ours, of what we find beautiful in ourselves. And so basically League of Queens was me speaking to a lot of that.
And can you create the kind of, like, for those listening who don't know what League of Queens is, what was League of Queens? What is League of Queens? It's a living thing, I feel like. And, like, what was that container like?
It was a group of women led by Caitlin Howe. And
The queen herself, Caitlin.
Yeah. A lot of tapping into your queen. And whatever that means for you, but really being able to express all the different elements that a queen is. And like, whether that's when you have rage or anger or, you know, unconditional love, all like, so, you know, we went through, did like an online League of Queens first, and there was going through all these different emotions and expressing them and really like being able to move them through our bodies and understanding what that was and not being afraid to show it. You know, as a women, we have to be like, oh, it's okay. I'm mad, but no one's gonna know that. I'm gonna be like, it's fine. I'll just take care of it. It's fine. Like, women tend to do that often. And learning to like step into your power and not just being like, oh, everything's fine, and worrying about everyone else and not worrying about yourself, and all of these things that women do, again, culturally, society, the things that we've learned. So we went through that container, and then this one was more of like celebration, connecting with women, healing sister wounds. My specific part was the self-love and like self-love, self-confidence, empowerment, and being seen. So I did a talk about that. And then later that night we did a photo shoot, like a group, you know, everyone was like kind of rotating through, and that turned out to be so powerful. We thought like someone would come and take their photos and move on, and it wound up being like someone would walk down the red carpet to their throne to take photos, and all the other women were cheering them on. And the energy in the room of like what we had we didn't plan it this way, it just happened, and it was such a testament to like the women that showed up there and like what we were doing and how much we were cheering for each other. And like when you take that into life, like when you have your girl squad around you cheering for you, or that's girl squad's not the best word, but you know what I mean, like our your own League of Queens around you, like we all get to be our own queen in whatever expression that is, and however we decide that is what is for us, like that's what we're tapping into. Like, here's a reminder that you're a badass. And that, a lot of times that's with when I photograph women, it's like, I'm going to show you a way that you haven't seen yourself before. I'm going to remind you that you can be, like, you are this person, and you sometimes forget, or you don't want to see it, or you're so stuck on, oh, this doesn't look right, or if I was skinnier, if I was this, and it's like, what if you were just you, and that's okay. And just being able to be present with that, and retraining our, you know, inner critic and all of those things. And also there's an element too of being able to like play almost like a different character in a photo shoot, of like, I'm gonna, you know, play that I'm a queen today, or I'm gonna play that I'm angry, and like go through these emotions or expressions. And actually when I was like probably, I don't know, like preteen, 12 or 13, I remember I would like play dress up with my friends. And well, not like we wouldn't play dress up like we were teens, but I would have them like dress like, oh, put this wedding dress on, or dress like a hippie, and then I would take pictures of them on like this old, you know, film point and shoot. And I realized that like we were just playing these roles of like different versions of ourselves. And it's like, how many versions of women are we, even in our like mother, sister, friend, you know, career, like all of these different things that we are. And it's like, you can play those things, and sometimes we need to play that part even in a photo for a minute, to feel what it feels like, even if it's just 10 minutes during a photo shoot, to feel it and be like, oh right, like I am that, and I can get to that embodiment of like being more confident, even if I need the that moment of the camera helping, like, that's going to show me later in that photo. It's like this it's like a little mind game that we can play.
Yeah, absolutely.
To get to that embodiment.
Yeah, and feeling the joy in those little moments that you can play all these parts, and they are all part of you, and they are integrated into your being and your soul, and you can call on them at any moment in time to show up, because you know what it feels like to be that.
And you know how to call on it. Like, that's the other, like, that's the practice, right? Or having the awareness of being like, I actually am mad, and I'm not going to stuff this down and say that it's okay. Or I'm going to actually use my voice and speak and say, it doesn't have to be in an angry way, but you could speak to your needs.
Yeah.
It's like, everything that I've been doing in photography has been things that I've had to learn in my own life. Of like, I can actually express when I need something. I did for years of my life. I would just be like, no, I'm fine. I don't need that. It's fine. I could sleep on the floor with no blanket or pillow. It's fine. You know, like,
I'm good.
I don't need any water. And like, meanwhile, I have no voice. Like, it's just this, like, not
Trying to like take up
ask.
too much space, or like just trying to like play small, basically. Wow, we could go in like 17 different directions from here. What in your life made you want to create safety for other human beings? Like, was there a moment or something in your life that made you feel unsafe, where you said, no, I need to make others feel this way?
Probably a lot of moments in my life. Moments of just, you know, when you're a kid and you don't feel safe, and then a lot of my teenage years, when my mom was like struggling with addiction and she wasn't a parent, and I was like taking care of my little sister, who was 12 years younger than me, so I basically was kind of raising her, and things weren't safe. And that's when I kind of realized, like, oh, I have to make sure that everyone around me is safe, and I have to make sure I'm safe. And it wasn't until, you know, way later in life that I realized, like, how much that feeling of needing to be safe and okay was domineering my life. Like, it was in control. I mean, and it still comes back up again, like going back to like the scarcity thing, like that essentially comes down to safety. So, I mean, there was the younger years, and then, you know, more recently as an adult, like, you know, 5 years ago, being in an abusive relationship and realizing, like, oh, this isn't safe either. And we can put ourselves in so many positions where we're not safe, or being around people. Like, you don't have to be around someone that doesn't make you feel safe, but sometimes you are. And it takes a lot to walk away from those spaces, and just realizing, like, I don't want anyone to ever have to feel things that I felt. And if I can show up in a way that is supportive and safe in whatever way is comfortable for that person, if I'm next to you, I hope that you feel safe and that you're okay to be completely yourself. And that's, you know, that's wildly different than, you know, being in a traumatic childhood experience and being in like a abusive relationship, but like just in the everyday of just how you say hello to someone and how you communicate with someone. Like, there's these very small little ways that are just like these micro safeties, you know, where it's like that can just perpetuate and like make someone feel calm. Like us having a conversation here and us being in a friendship, like if I can make you feel good anytime we have a conversation and what you're sharing and being supportive, and also like there's a part of safety too where it's like being able to tell someone something hard in a safe way that they don't want to hear. But if you're truly a friend that cares about them and you're their safe, you know, you're going to be honest with them, because honesty and truth is also safety. Like there's this element there of like, because that's authentic. And it's like I feel like we're always trying to get back to like our own authentic expression of ourselves. And yeah, that to me, I guess, is safety. And I honestly forgot the question at this point. But there's been a lot of times in my life where I've wanted to feel safe, and I'm still even honestly learning for myself where I feel safe and being able to step into my fullest authenticity and expression of like, I am safe. and that will empower me to be more of myself. And I'm still like pushing that all the time. And maybe it gets easier with age.
Yeah. So coming back to like the pressure that you feel from societal norms to be a certain way by a certain moment in time, like, oh, you need to have a house and you need to be married and you should have kids by now. And you and I've had this conversation just as friends multiple times because we're like older and both of us don't have kids. I say older, but like I feel really alive and really young. So I'm gonna say we're like young, but like in societal's view, if either one of us were to get pregnant, we would be considered geriatric.
Okay.
Which is like, yeah. So like I want to talk about just like pressure from external and how you don't let that bug you and like how you weave in the world in a way that like is just authentically you without letting anyone else come in and pressure you that doesn't fully understand the life that you're living and like the choices that you've made for yourself.
I mean, as much as there's pressure that comes from other people, but there's also pressure, like there's my own pressure that I'm putting on myself.
Yeah.
And that's a
I feel
battle
that.
within itself. And it's like, I think for probably most of my life, I haven't really given a shit what other people were doing. That's not what's like.
Love that.
Yeah. That's kind of, I think that's almost
the Jersey
part of,
coming out.
Yeah. A little bit of Jersey, a little bit of New York, a little bit of artist.
Yeah.
Like you have to kind of not give a fuck.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me that is like, getting older. That's not an easy thing to do. And learning to accept and love all of those parts. And again, what it comes back to, it's just always a common theme with me, is trust. And if I look back at my life, everything was in perfect timing. Even the things that were not, wonderful and beautiful, but like having a relationship that's going to blow up your life and make you question everything, perfect timing. Grateful for it. It was tough. It was hard. And it put me on a completely, like it literally shifted me. And I wouldn't take it back. Like I wouldn't take anything back. All the mistakes, it's like you're learning and shifting into alignment. And if you trust, what is for you is coming for you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I'm like, sitting here just, not doing anything, waiting for the universe. Like, no, I'm doing the things that I love and I'm moving towards what I want. But I also trust that whatever, like, it's going to align for me. And it does. Like, I remember when I was super young, when I first started doing photography, I was like, I want to like travel the world and take pictures. I wound up working for TripAdvisor for years, taking pictures and traveling around. And not until like years of doing that was I like, oh my God, like I'm doing that thing that I said that I wanted to do. And it's like, and then even with working with the community, like with Fit for Service, I came to Sedona in 2019. I wasn't shooting. I was with my, an ex. Went on a hike and was like, I want to shoot events like this. And I just kind of like said it to the universe. By 2020, I was here shooting. There was no like clear direct path. It was just like, this seems like really good and aligned. And I think that would feel good. And then it happened.
Yeah.
And it's like
speak it into existence.
Yeah.
Basically.
And like, that is the trust. Did that mean that I just like sat there and like, just thought I could just manifest
and didn't
that
hone
into
your craft?
Yeah. No, but I also knew like, I could shoot this. I've been shooting events and wanting to shoot something that had that deeper meaning, that like heart and soul. Yeah. And even with travel, I kind of realized like, no, beautiful places, but it was like a lot of hotels and there wasn't heart. And there was like, and that was what was coming next for me. And like, since then it's just been like all heart, all deeper, like soul stuff for me. And I'm like, I found it. I'm even more aligned. And then like League of Queens comes and it's like, oh my God, like I never thought I would speak on a stage in front of people. I still am nervous. I was so nervous to do it. But like once I did it, I was like, oh my God, okay, I can do that. And it's like, I never would have thought that. But like, again, trust the universe and things are going to come that you're supposed to be doing that you might not have ever thought you would be doing.
Yep.
There it is.
There's trust and timing, and then there's also like continuing to take action and little steps forward every single day to get because it's cumulative over time. Like it's the buildup of, like, if you didn't already know all the technical aspects of how to be like a badass photographer, and the lighting and the angles and all, and which lens to use and all those things, if you didn't know that and learn that all up until this point, it wouldn't have worked out that way. And so the divine timing just like tells you exactly what needs to happen when it needs to happen.
And like being clear in your heart too, of like knowing what it is that you want, even if it's not like that specific exact thing, but knowing what feels good and knowing what fills your heart, and being clear in that intention of like, what is my intention with photography? Whether I was shooting, you know, years ago, it still was the same thing of like, I want people to see beauty in everything around them, whatever that is. And like, you know, I shoot a lot of art stuff, and it's a whole other separate thing of photographing art, selling art, which is way more like the natural elements. And I've always wanted, it's like what I love doing. Like that is actually the hobby part, right? Like I can't go for a hike without being like, oh, I need to take a picture of this tree bark. Like, you know, like it's just randomness, but it also fills my soul. And the intention behind that is like, there's beauty in this thing. Or the house plants that I have in my apartment, there's beauty in that, and it makes me feel good. And you know, when you start to put your life like in alignment and have beautiful humans around you and people that make you feel good, and you build a space around you that feels good, you begin to like thrive and grow and like feel fulfilled in even the simplest of spaces where you might not have been able to find it before.
So a lot of your passion is really inspiring. You mentioned when you were younger, you did like mushroom ceremonies with your friends, but it wasn't really intentional. And I know that you've gotten a lot out of plant medicines. And so I'm just curious how plant medicine has helped you grow and weave into this space and helped you become like kind of like unfuckwithable in your profession. And if there's also like a specific ceremony or specific story that you could weave for us, something that like changed you, I would love to hear about that if you're willing to share.
Yeah, okay. Well, so I would say there's two things that I think of the most important thing for me of plant medicine and ceremonies. And it's not something I do all the time. I'm very intentional with it, very like, this feels good. I think this is probably what I would want to do next as my next journey. And then I kind of wait for it to come and the timing to come, and make sure that I have my schedule open enough that I have the time to like actually integrate the thing that I'm about to do. Now, mind you, when I was doing mushrooms when I was 14, they were not ceremonies. We were like jumping on a trampoline and
that's a ceremony,
hanging out in the backyard and, you know, just doing teenager stuff. Yeah. But as an adult, it's like I haven't really like chased the things. It's like when they come, they come. And it's actually that to me feels really safe, because it's like to have someone just be like, hey, there's this thing that we're gonna go do, whether it's ayahuasca or like they just kind of align. And if the timing is right, then I'm like, okay, I can say yes to this. Which comes to one of the important points I think of doing ceremony is it can be really scary. Like I don't take it lightly, and I'm afraid very often, whether it's mushrooms. I mean, a little bit less afraid of mushrooms now, but ayahuasca, like, it's not something that you're just walking into, like, without having some level of, like, reverence and being humble, but, like, reverence, I guess, would be the right word, of, like, I don't know what I'm about to learn and what I'm about to go through, but I'm willing to do it. And saying yes to those things is where that's part of the lesson of, like, you can do these things that are going to be really hard. And then when you take that lesson and you put it into real life, it's a lot easier to handle really hard things, because you know you can do it. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's like you're just building these tools. It's like practice. It's like cold plunging. Nobody wants to get in ice cold water. But then you do it, and then you kind of suffer through it, and then you get out and you're like, oh my God, I feel amazing. Yeah. And then you forget, even if you're doing it the next day, and you're like, oof. And it does get easier over time, but like that's like a micro reminder, just doing a cold plunge. And then going and doing ayahuasca, it's the same thing. It's going to be hard. I'm going to learn some stuff. So that to me is like facing fear and realizing that that's just resistance and I can do hard things. So like that's like part one. One of the big lessons, and like not being as afraid. And even now when something comes up, I'm like, okay, I think I could do that. And then the next biggest lesson is every journey I've done, there's the point where I'm like, oh, it's me. I'm the problem. Like,
me all along.
It was me. I made the decision. I'm the one that has that mindset. I'm the one that has that limiting belief. I'm the one that chose this thing. And like, of course, there's like these other lessons in there of things, and you're releasing trauma. Like, there's so much to it, so big. But when you really boil it down, it's like, well, I'm the one that thought about something that way, or I'm the one that has that belief. And until I can shift that and like work on something for myself, like it's not about anyone else. Like, and then probably the third thing is like connection, deep connection to yourself, nature, earth. Like there's just universe, cosmos, like it's this deeper connection that I think we need to remember. And we forget, because we're humans, we forget. So that's like the other little thing, like, oh yeah, by the way, you're connected to everything, you're connected to everyone, like we're all one. And it's like, okay, right, need that reminder. And like that's kind of how it's almost like a refresher at this point for me, of like when I do a plant medicine ceremony, I know I'm going to get some of that. And let's see, I've had one of the first times I did ayahuasca, it was a lot of trauma release. And I didn't purge, but my body was shaking, and I had no idea that that was normal. And I remember laying there and just shaking for hours. And afterwards,
that was like your body's way of purging, right?
Yes.
It was just like shaking out the
shaking
trauma.
And like that happens in breath work. Like we see the way
Mm-hmm.
our body has to move this stuff out. And when that happened, like one, feeling a lot better afterwards and realizing like how much was stuck in my, like logically, I know that, like coming out of that abusive relationship, logically, I know that that wasn't okay. And like, I can logic my way out of it and convince myself that everything is better, but like your body still has that tension and like that fear and all of those other things where it's like that started to move.
Because you got out of your mind and into your body's electrical network, and you allowed it to just release without the
and that was
analytical.
the first time. And then just this last time that I did ayahuasca, it was like I can tell like how much I've actually grown in the space, and I was literally moving energy out, like through my body, out of it. Like I was like, and I could tell what was mine and what was someone else's. And what it was wild experience to try and explain, but it felt like I had just grown into, like I had done, I don't know, I guess I had done a little bit of work, and it felt a little bit better,
A little bit of work. I feel like you did a lot of work.
But like even that
excavating,
like that's a wild statement to me, because I feel like we're always learning and we're always growing. But it did feel like I didn't have that same trauma shaking, and it's like, oh, I had moved past that, and I was actually able to like feel and have an awareness of what was going on within my body, and like trusting my body and like trusting what I was doing and trusting the ceremony. Like the first time I was really scared and like could barely like, I don't know, like what am I doing? I'm in this weird room with all these people, like people are throwing up, like what, all of the fears are there. And then it's like, now it's like, oh no, I know what I'm about to go do, and I'm so ready, and I'm with a group of people that I trust, and the maestra, I trust her, everything is good. And again, look at me describing how safe I was. So there's that safety thing again.
Absolutely.
That is a very big need for me. And choosing the right spot of where I was going to lay. And it's like always this connection to safety. But when I had that, I could completely just relax into that ceremony. And relax is a strong word. There wasn't much relaxing, but I was able to be completely in that space. And I mean, that almost plays with the idea of like being in our feminine energy, which is also like really creative. So the more that I've been able to feel safe in my life, the more that I've been able to tap into my creativity and lean more into my art. So that's also been kind of a cycle. And like people use creativity as an expression when they're going through like anger and sadness, and I've done that a lot. If I'm going through something hard, an art project's coming for sure. I'm like immediately, I got to go out and shoot.
Yeah,
that's it. But being able to like tap into that just by being like in my own truest expression and feeling safe and like in that specifically the feminine space, and that's something that I'm kind of always looking to dance with more of like, how can I be more in my like queen and in that safety and create from that space as opposed to creating from the dark art space like oh, I'm an artist in strife, which does work. I'm not going to
starving artist.
I'm not going to discount that or discredit it. It is a tool and I know how to use it. And most artists absolutely do. But being able to use it in a more empowered space, and that's kind of the thing that I've like, that's like my new thing that I'm dancing with. I'm like, this is fun. Let me dance in that space. Let me be able to be more safe in every moment.
And it seems like your plant medicine journeys have helped you really kind of step into that power a little bit more too. Some of those like key lessons that you're saying, okay, well, you know, the first time around it was just like a full body trauma release, but the second time around I got to integrate like some of that energy amount. Now
no, the second time was hard too.
Yeah, second time
not until this last time.
Not until
we got there. It took a little while.
Was that your third ceremony?
Third time doing it, but I had done 2 ceremonies on like the first sitting. First ceremony was 2 sittings. Next ceremony was 2 sittings, and then this last time was just 1.
Oh wow.
Which was, I mean, who knows? Maybe if I had done a second night, it would have been really hard. But this one was the first time. It was like, oh, that was actually kind of pleasant.
Wow.
And it still was hard.
Still hard.
Still
but
very
like,
hard, but like not.
But a different lesson.
Yeah.
Different lesson. Yeah.
And like realizing, I think there's some really important questions that you can ask or intentions that you can set when you go into ceremony. And I think that's one of the most important things. Like, what is your intention for doing this thing? And I got really clear before I went in. And that was the first time I think I had actually been really clear too. And I asked things to like help me grow as opposed to help me heal. Like instead of like, you know, trauma healing, it was like, no, let's focus on growth. Like, show me at my highest self. And being able to play with that was like, ooh, okay, this is different. Like, we're playing a different game now, which is beautiful.
Okay, so transitioning out of ceremony, integrating into life experience, I want to take us back to the most recent event that you were a part of, the League of Queens, which we touched on earlier. You were a speaker, you were photographing people, you talked about people being in their fullest expression, walking down a red carpet, sitting on a throne. So tell me a little bit more about those types of events, and if speaking and being on a stage and integrating in those types of spaces will be something that you are continuing to bring into your expression of art moving forward.
Yes.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
I never thought it would be, and I never considered, or maybe even small groups, I thought I would do it, but it was never something that I was like, oh, absolutely, I'm doing this. But then once I did it, which was a ceremony within itself of preparing myself to go on stage to talk about things, and literally everyone, I think, cried, everyone in the audience. And I was like, oh my God, I actually touched hearts. But realizing that is something that I wanted to do. And not in a way of like, oh, I want to be on a stage. Like, no, I want to help people. And I could see the shifts in people and how many women came up after me. And like, oh my gosh, like that really shifted something in me. And that really it just so many women struggling with the same things. And when we say it out loud, just say it out loud and share it. It's like that thing that we always say, like, if you can be vulnerable, like it gives someone else the permission to be vulnerable. And when we do that with women and our thoughts of, you know, our insecurities, and we start to express them, like, you realize that everyone has these things and they might be different for each person, but we all have them. Like, we can just accept that part. Vailana was also a part of the League of Queens, and she did, you know, a lot more of the expression and voice and somatic type experience. and it was
Swamping.
so beautiful. There was an exercise she did with a rose and really tapping into the connection, and just like the entire, like Caitlin, of course, like did an ecstatic dance, and she was actually on stage with me when we were speaking because I was so nervous that she was like, well, we'll kind of do it like a podcast. And it was this thing of me being able to start to feel comfortable. And so once I got done, and again, it was like, that was a ceremony for me. That was like, oh my God, I'm doing this thing that I've wanted to do for so long, and now I just did it, and realizing like, oh, you're going to talk about all these things? Or are you going to like embody them more? Are you going to like practice what you preach? Like, come on. You're going to talk about self-confidence and you're terrified about being on stage. It was like an up-leveling of itself. And that was beautiful. And then
that was the medicine in itself for you to be like, yes, okay.
And then talking to Vailana afterwards and being like, I wanted to say this and I didn't say this. And she was like, when I first started, I did the exact same thing. And like, it's just the flow. And like, that one time you do something, you can't imagine that is going to be everything that like you wanted to do in that one thing. And like when you apply that to life, like every time you're going to do something and maybe you left that little thing out and you're just going to get better at it. Like, and it was just this lesson of like, oh, right. This is how it goes. Like, I'm going to just keep going farther and trying harder and doing better.
And that was your first time on stage, and it's almost like working out. Like, you need reps. Like, you got to get the reps in, right? Like, or it's not going to be, and it's never going to be perfect. You're always going to be looking at yourself and saying, oh, I could have said this differently, or maybe this could be different. But if you look back at the reason why you're doing it is to change people's lives, and that a bunch of women came up to you afterward and said, I was truly connected to what you were saying, and you shifted something in me, and you changed something in me, and I went through something similar, and this really touched me, and now I feel more connected to you. That is the medicine. And people don't care about the little things that you messed up on, or the, you said a word wrong, or you slurred your mouth speech, whatever. You couldn't speak English like I do right now. And no one remembers that, but they remember how you made them feel. They remember how authentic that you were and how you touched them in that moment. And we're always so concerned about how we look or how we are perceived, but so is everyone else. And so most of the time people aren't being present enough to even remember,
because they're so worried about their own shit.
Absolutely. And so that's the thing that, like, I feel like if you keep doing it and you keep pressing on that, or like double clicking on that talent, you'll be able to touch so many lives because your story matters. And
like that's the thing where I'm like, but everyone's story matters. And it does. Like, I want everyone to like be able to express completely and fully, and that's part of like why I'm even speaking to it to begin with. Because I want everyone to have that confidence to be like, you can be completely you. You don't have to change who you are. You don't have to change your appearance. You don't have to do any of these things. You are amazing just as you. Trust that you can be that person and express it authentically and don't hold back. And I think, I'm obviously called to working with women in that space a lot, but that is, by empowering women, it's actually helping men too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because then we get to actually be like the queens that we know we can be, and not, being afraid and, scared little maidens, like really stepping into that other part.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also stepping into your expression, giving others the permission to do exactly that as well, in however form they want to.
Yeah.
And big shout out to Vailana and Caitlin for like working on League of Queens, and big shout out to you for being a part of that as well. I know it took a lot of work.
Big shout out to them for trusting me to do that. Being like, oh, you've never been on a stage before. Here you go. Like, huge.
And that is it, right?
Yeah.
Like, that is two women who are empowering another woman who they see something so beautiful in, and they're like, no, this girl needs a mic. Like, hand her the mic, right? And you partially not believing in yourself, but then stepping into that fullness and then touching people in the way that you maybe never thought you could.
Being afraid and fighting past it. It like exactly goes back to what we were talking about with the ceremony too, of like, I was terrified, but I'm going to do it anyway because I know it's going to be better for me on the other side. And then exactly like that is the League of Queens. Like, the League of Queens brought me in and literally was like, hey, we're going to hand you this thing. Like, that was the most queen shit they could have done, of like, hey, we're going to bring you, like, that was like, oh my God, this is what like friendship is like, bringing these other people in and showing them their power and saying, hey, we trust you and believe in you. Do you believe in yourself? Are you going to do this? And it's like, well, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. But that is sisterhood. That is like believing in your friends and saying, let's go, like, let's do this. I'm cheering for you. I got you. Let's do it.
And I know you might be scared, but I'll go sit with you and like,
I'm gonna
let's
hold your
get through
hand.
it.
I'm gonna push you when you need to be pushed. I'm gonna talk to you afterward. Like we got this. And like, who doesn't want that in their life?
And that's the power of community.
Yeah, that is.
Man, okay, so we could talk for like 4 or 5 more hours, and we're also spending the next 5 days together.
Yes.
So I'm so excited for all the juicy and crunchy that we're about to get into. But for this podcast, and for everyone listening, so that you don't have to listen to our next 5 days of conversation, even though it'd be really, really interesting.
It would be pretty interesting.
If you were flying the wall. So Kimberly, where can people find you? And this is the amazing Kimberly Mufferi. I want to know, and for everyone listening, I would love to know if you can share where people can find you, website, social media, wherever you're most active, and then also like the services that you provide, so that if people are interested in like, oh, I have a birth coming up and she sounds like the most amazing person to do that for me, or if I have an event coming up and I want her to shoot that, awesome. That would be amazing. And then that actually sparked one more question for me, so I'll let you answer that, and then I'll ask you a final question.
Okay. You can find my website, my Instagram is just my name. It's KimberlyMufferi. Very weird last name, but it's also really easy to find. Instagram is probably where I'm most active. Stuff on my website. Do people still go to websites? I don't even know. I think
so, yeah.
It's there.
It's there.
Yeah, and also like reach out. I love connecting with people, and
your Instagram is at
KimberlyMufferi.com.
Mufferi, okay.
Or not .com on Instagram.
Just plain.
At Kimberly Mufferi is my Instagram.
Yes, and thank you for
just my name.
Thank you for spelling that out. And I actually just learned that you're part Sicilian and part German, which is like super cool. Love that combo. It's doing
and my
wonders
sister
for
has
you.
blonde hair and green eyes, so she's
what?
German, Sicilian.
Wow.
And then my little sister's a mix between us both, but it's wild.
That's so cool. I want to see a picture of your sisters after this. So my last question, because the word event popped into my mind, and we didn't even get to touch on this, so we'll spend like a few minutes here and then we'll wrap it all up, since we've already done kind of like the wrap up. But you recently got the opportunity in a very synchronistic way to shoot a event in Texas for the Kennedy campaign.
Whoa, yes.
And I'm not political. I don't have any like ties to any political party, and I don't typically talk politics on this podcast specifically. But I'm just curious, what called you into that space, and like, how was that? Like, how was it being in the presence of a future presidential candidate, or like a presidential candidate who's running now as an independent, which is cool.
I've never been super into politics. I care when this sounds kind of a little bit asshole-ish, but I care when it affects me. So like I was at like the
That
Women's
doesn't sound
March.
asshole. I care when it affects me. That's like what everyone listening is thinking. Like, how is this going to actually impact me, instead of all these old people making decisions for the world? Like, how does it impact me? Because I thought that when I was younger too, and I'd be like, no, I'm not going to vote because it doesn't matter, because who cares?
And I went through phases of voting, and I tend to be someone that really cares about certain things, where I'm like, when I was 9 years old, I started a Save the Dolphins club for me and my friends, and that was like,
gotta save those dolphins.
The Save the Dolphin tuna came out, and that was the big rage.
Yes.
But like, I've always been this like, when I care about something, it really matters, and I would kind of become like this bleeding heart person of like, oh, I have to help this thing.
Yeah.
Until it got really overwhelming because of what's going on all the time. There's another thing that's going on.
There's so many things you could be passionate about all at once, and then it becomes too much.
And feeling helpless. And that's what I started to feel in politics. It's just feeling helpless. Like, what does it matter? Like, I don't like either candidate.
And what
does
difference
it matter?
can I make?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But also, like, I don't actually like what was presented for me to vote for. Like, neither of you. And neither side. Like, I'm not one way or the other. It's like, I'm issue-based, and like, it's very nuanced and changing, and it's not something where I'm just going to identify with like one side.
Right, and the least probable thing is that you would agree with every single thing somebody says.
In life or politics.
In life, in love,
like,
in every way that you weave in the world. Because we're all unique individuals, and we all have our unique experiences, and we all have these perceptions that we're going to bring into the world. Hi, plane, or whatever you are. outside, and this is being recorded, and we will let the helicopter pass. I'm curious how you actually got like invited to that event, because I believe that there was a live podcast recording with Aubrey Marcus and RFK. I keep trying to say JFK is like in my brain, but RFK. And you shot that event because you do a lot of work with Aubrey and with Vailana and the whole Fit for Service crew. But then you were invited to shoot another event. So like, how did that weave in it, and what was that like?
So first of all, I love RFK. I love him. After like listening to Aubrey's first podcast with him and Rogan's podcast with him, I was like, oh, this guy's legit.
Yeah.
And he's authentic.
Yeah.
And I trust him. How rare is it to feel like you trust a politician, right? So that was kind of the thing. And then when Aubrey's like, well, we're going to do a live podcast. It's going to be an event. We're going to do like fundraising. Of course I'm going to take pictures. Like, I'm there. Obviously I met him there. And actually his videographer, Wyatt, used to work for Aubrey.
Oh.
Years ago.
What a synchronicity.
Yeah, and he does video now for RFK. And he was there, so I was talking to him, and I was like, do you guys need a photographer for the next day? The next rally that was in Texas. And he was like, yeah, we don't have a photographer. And I was like, what? He's like, come. And I'm like, of course. And that kind of almost reminded me when I was, starting photography, how many things that I would be like, I wonder if they have a photographer. And just kind of like finding the opportunities and planting myself in things that I'm passionate about. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to go photograph.
And how many doors have been opened because you've done that and followed that thread.
And like, this is like history, like this is, some people might not realize it just yet, but it is. Like, this is a serious candidate he's independent. He's running independent. We'll see. Yeah. But
we will see.
I'm going for it. Yeah. He's going for it.
He's going for it. And I listened to his recording with Joe Rogan. And I wasn't able to listen to the other podcast with Aubrey Marcus because it was taken down, and
the YouTube was taken down. I think it's still on Spotify.
It is, okay. So I need to go back and
which is also that. Like, it's taken down off of YouTube. Like, this is the games that we're playing
censorship,
with, which is why all of a sudden I do care about politics, because what? Yeah,
we could talk about censorship too, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. So I think the question that I want to know more about is, what was the energy like in the room? Not necessarily like what he stands for and what his political views are, but what was the feel and the energy in the room? Because there was a lot of like big people in that room too. It wasn't like just a regular old rally. Like, there were like important people in the podcast,
the live podcast, and the dinner. It's people. You could feel again the heart in the room and people that care. It's not a bunch of people that are into politics necessarily. They're into change, and they're fed up with what the hell is going on. And like, that's kind of exactly where I'm at. Like, that's what I mean, where it's just like, this feels right. And we're at a point where it does really matter what we're doing. And we can't just do our kind of spiritual bypass of, I'm just going to work on myself and everything is going to be okay. That is great in every aspect of life. Work on yourself. Get your shit right. But when it comes to politics, we actually have to start caring a little bit. And I know, like, a lot of, and this is not the,
Does that mean we're old?
I think it does mean we're old.
Does that mean we're old?
I'm sitting here telling you that politics matter.
And my bedtime is 9:30 p.m. Yeah.
Yes. But yet, like, realizing, like, how many people in the spiritual community just don't care about politics or, like, anything that's in, like, the real world. And I was one of them. I was like, fuck it. It doesn't matter anyway. Yeah. But it does. And there's this chance that it could actually really, like, matter and actually really do some change. And like, what would happen if everyone that didn't care started to care, because we have someone that is willing to go to bat for us, and that it, like, go to bat for, like, the more alternative, and approaching things with logic and fairness and caring, and he has heart and he's healthy, and like all of these things where it's just not what we've had for years in our presidents. Of someone that you actually look up to. And I mean, selfishly, on my own, like, I got to photograph a Kennedy. Like, what?
Girl, I mean,
I'm like, I think I just up-leveled. I don't know.
I just up-leveled. And we were talking about this earlier because being in New England and being in Massachusetts, particularly where I live, the Kennedy compound is there. There's so much history. All the museums are there. And I walked into an antique shop the other day, and I was thinking about getting something for you because I know that you're a big fan. But there was all this like old JFK stuff in there, and I was like, this family, love them or hate them, they've had such a huge impact on the history of our country, and it does matter. It does matter, and I feel like it's in his bloodline, and it's in his genetics and in his DNA to carry the torch and to be a target, pretty much, for a lot of things, and so I think he is doing the right thing by using his voice in the way that he is. And again, like, the most uncommon thing is that you would agree with every single thing every person has to say. And I love a lot of the things that he's saying. I don't agree with all of it, but I love a lot of things that he's saying. And I think that he is truly in his heart, like you mentioned.
His character, like
it's a character thing.
Who he is, like actually how he shows up, how
and it's
his
authentic.
heart. Yeah, it's authentic, and like you said, he's a Kennedy. There's a bloodline there of like
There's a
people
bloodline.
and like even as a New Yorker, he did a lot of stuff for the Hudson. So like for me, that I'm like, oh, he cared about all these things before he needed to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's funny because it's not funny, but it's interesting that he appeals to such a wide range of humans. Like you mentioned the spiritual community, and yes, I think that the spiritual community, like whatever that is, they appeal to him because he is living his life in a way that's different than a lot of other people. But I also think he appeals to the left wing and the right wing. I feel like he really is able to be this bridge to connect our country that really is divided at this moment in time. Yeah. And so I do think that there's a really huge opportunity for him to be a wonderful candidate. And just wanted to touch on that because I know you're passionate about it. And you came in and you had your button on your purse, and I was like, oh, she's got her Kennedy button. And again, like, this is not like a promotion or anything like that, but it is just talking about one soul who's been able to gain so much following with the power of their voice in a good way.
And their heart. That's the thing. Like, you just see it. Like, the things that he talks about. Like, I'm excited for you to listen to more of the podcast. Yeah. Because, like, the more I learn, the more I'm like, oh my God, he's great.
I know, and I'm not even educated talking on this topic,
no,
but I did
neither
want
am
to
I.
talk about it. Yeah.
That's the other thing, too. Like, I'm not, like, this super political person, but I can tell, like, I can feel people's hearts. You can feel their authenticity. Anyone, anywhere. So, like, being able to meet him and see and feel how kind and, like, how much he does care. And there's, like, I haven't met many politicians, but they certainly aren't presenting that way. And
well, they might be presenting what we were talking about earlier, which is like a character or a show, and
like turning it on.
Yeah. And like, how many candidates will do a live podcast where they could potentially be asked a question that they don't want to be asked, or that would make them get up and walk out of the room, or would maybe trigger some part of them where they don't want to answer that. And I think that, the cool thing about Aubrey is that he really gets into the heart of questions, in my opinion. I think he's a really good podcaster, and I think he's a good interviewer. And so the types of deep questions, I think would scare some people.
And also like other topics to talk about, like outside of just like, what is your policy on this? Like, there's so much more to it. Yeah. And at this point too, of like healing that divide of like, it's really excited that he's running as an independent. Like, could this be the first time that an independent wins? Is there a potential that this very clear left-right divide could actually start to heal? Because that is part of the problem. No matter who would be running, this divide has to be healed, and we've known it for years. Like, it's been so
it's palpable. I think both sides can taste the disconnect and the like big trench that has been created between both parties, and it's become so wide that like there's got to be somebody that can unify, or at least
there's got to be a third door.
Yeah, there's always that third door. So this is the third door, and I appreciate you explaining kind of the energy in the room and how people were feeling, because I think that's the most important thing, right? How somebody they can talk about policies all day long, but are they truly like talking from here, or are they talking to be a show?
Reading a prompter.
Yeah. And like, I think that those opportunities where you like seize the moment and you're like, hey, do you guys have a photographer for tomorrow? I'll do it. Like, I think you saying yes with discernment and knowing exactly what you want will bring more and more and more your way too. So I'm excited for what the future holds.
Me too.
And I'm excited to spend the next 5 days with you. And you guys already know where to find Kimberly, but this my friend. And
This is my friend.
It is my friend. And thank you so much for coming on the
Thank you
Sacred
for
Healing
having
Podcast. Let's leave the same way we came, with a few breaths, because when in Sedona, so we'll just get grounded. Taking a deep inhale through our nose, holding at the top, and exhale out your mouth. And listening to all the sounds around us, the birds, the helicopters, the landscapers, the butterflies, all the things. And knowing that this land that we're on right now is sacred. We are in a vortex. The energy is high, and sending love and light and healing out to this land, out to our country, out to the world, out to the universe, and out to the cosmos. Taking another deep inhale and exhale. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time. And yeah.
Thank you.
Yay!
Oh my God, we did it.
I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Oh my God.
So
Big lizard.
Oh, there's a lizard back there.
A little baby
It went
lizard.
inside the tree.
It lives in the tree,
It was
and it's like, why are you guys doing this?
it was a big lizard.
It's like, can you guys get the F away from my spot right now? Okay.
Do I have leaves in my hair?
No.
It's just all up in the tree.
Okay.